And it all comes from a lack of trust. And I think we throw that word around. And it seems like this nebulous thing. We know when we have it, we don't know it, we know when we don't have it. But I like to break it into the three sources of trust that I find that I'm going to go back to this slide real quick. That little line of emotional defense, the more trust you have, the faster your brain can jump over to objectivity and start to look at the bigger picture. The less trust you have, or the more damaged trust, the thicker that line is. And you just end up hanging out and being in emotion that everything you look at, you're defending yourself against, and you're looking for proof that you're in danger. So the three sources are yourself. And I think this is the most powerful one. If you can trust yourself, if you have confidence and you believe that you can navigate things, and you know what, no matter what, I'll make the right decision for myself. It's a really solid place to come from, and you can navigate a lot. Trust in the relationship. If you have trust in the relationship, what's beautiful is I can be vulnerable. I don't always have to feel great about myself. I think Gerri and I bonded through, we were always, got along working together, but through COVID, we really bonded. And for me, I was not having a lot of trust in myself. And I was able to have the trust into the relationship to be able to admit that and to work through it and have a safe space
Insane.
to land.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things of, when I hear people say like, oh, you don't bring your personal life to work. I feel like COVID kind of wiped that out. But this idea of, I don't want to have to feel like I have to be the strongest version of myself all the time because then I think that's what combats against our ability to, I can admit a mistake. I can say I'm not perfect. I don't know stuff.
But it also goes to the idea, that's where you get to co-create. If I come in and can say, I don't really know how to solve this problem, instead of coming in trying to show like, I can't let anybody think I'm weak. Instead, it's this thing is on my mind. Or as you just talk through something, you start sparking brand new ideas because it's safe in that relationship to, no, ooh, how about this? And you're building on, as opposed to, I can't put myself in any way vulnerable with that other person.
Yeah, and the energy, it basically is like, where did you end up getting to put your energy? And that it kind of leads me to this third one, which is the trust and environment. And I share this a lot in classes. I call it the tale of two teams. And I worked for two different teams. And one team, it was definitely my guard had to be up. You couldn't do anything wrong. You get picked apart in meetings. And I remember, I think about the work that I did on that team. And I think anyone could look at me on that team and go, she's kind of an average performer. I don't think anyone would have been surprised and delighted by the stuff that I was doing. But I spent so much time having to guard myself against doing something wrong that I think I well, she hits her deadlines. Then I went to this other team, and after some moments of like healing from trauma, and I realized like, oh, it's a very safe environment. No one's expecting you to get things perfect. They're 100% expecting things to take time or to be messy sometimes. And maybe about a year or two into it, I just realized like, wow, this organization, same organization, is getting at least 300%. I'm not a mathematician, but I'm going to mark it as like 300% more productivity and better ideas. None of my energy was going to defending myself and guarding myself. It was 100% going to how we're going to do good work. And I think the idea is, you were saying it earlier. I liked what you said about when you have to.
Well, this is your pearl of wisdom. You didn't remember that you shared with me, but I was working with somebody, and they happened to be younger in their career. Everything had looked great. They had been promoted quite quickly, which to me is a little bit of a red flag because they weren't being prepped and trained in the things they needed to do. They weren't given the level of authority that they should have had based on a title and everything else that's been promised. So they didn't have trust in the relationship with their manager because they got set up in this situation, and it wasn't safe to ask questions of their manager, even some of the other peers. They didn't trust the environment because they weren't set up for success. They didn't have the authority to activate on the changes that were supposed to be happening. So they didn't feel safe anywhere, and they started to not trust themselves. And that was the big, and I think the conversation that Heather had shared with me was, if you've got 2 out of 3, you can probably survive. And she was realizing it was eating away at, the one that she had when she started there. And it was time to figure out a new plan, like take control, get in the driver's seat of her career to say, I need to be in a space where I can go back to trusting myself. I'm not an idiot. I can figure things out. And what kind of environment can I thrive in? And, sometimes you don't know what that manager relationship or peer relationship will be until you get into a new organization. But that heightened mindfulness of what should I be looking for so that ultimately you're not eating away at yourself.
Yeah, and it always makes me think of, and I talk about this in the conflict workshop, is this ability to be a thermostat versus a thermometer. And a thermostat sets the temperature of the room, and no matter how hot or cold it gets, it keeps it at, like, say, 70 degrees. The thermometer has to react to the environment. So when I'm coaching someone or helping people through a conflict, if I hear them say, well, you don't understand, Heather, the way that they said this, I had to yell, I had to, shut down, whatever it might be. I get, okay, we're doing thermometer kind of things. We're very, I have to respond to my environment. Now, that said, it goes to this idea of when you have two things in place, you're better off. The thermostat, if it's operating, I come from the desert, so I know what 130-degree weather feels like. If your thermostat, just like during the summer, we have these, at least in Southern California, these, electrical,
Triple digit days.
yeah, triple digit days, and the electricity shuts down and the power goes out. And it's because it's too much. So as much as, yes, we are in charge of how we think, we choose our thoughts, we decide how we feel about things, we are in charge of that. If the environment is constantly just kind of pressuring us for this, and it's 130 degrees outside because the environment or the relationship is toxic, then we're going to break down. And so we have to be thoughtful about that. We also have to think about what kind of environment are we creating for others. And no matter who you are, you've contributed in some sort of way to make things better for someone. And I guarantee you that you've done something to make it harder for them to stay in thermostat mode. And so there is a little bit of, how do you, one, create work environments where honestly people can expect all three? That I get that I own my trust in myself.
Right.
And no matter what kind of, bag of self-esteem was, crafted in my childhood, my job as an adult is to figure out how to trust in myself and have that piece of relationship with myself and be at peace with myself. But that we all recognize that we're co-creating with people and we're impacting people and we have responsibility for how we do that. And then especially in the workplace and companies as a whole and leaders as a whole, how are we creating an environment that is psychologically safe, that is inclusive, and that is setting people up kind of like that team number 2 that I talked about, where they really are just excited and focused on, how do I do great work?
Right. And primed to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.